We are telling the story of the very first CIA teams that went into Afghanistan in the weeks after the 9/11 attack.
And the key link with September the 11th, 2001, is that this is where Osama bin Laden, the leader of Al Qaeda, has been based, sheltered by the Taliban, effectively planning those attacks on the United States.
The United States, the CIA in particular, they're trying to find him, and they are actually working with some Afghan warlords, supplying them with non-lethal equipment, communications equipment, night vision goggles, cash, in the hopes that they can help target and hunt down bin Laden in Afghanistan.
But it's been a bit, not half-hearted, but limited, that operation. And then, I guess, September 11th, 2001, nearly 3,000 Americans killed. And immediately they know it's bin Laden, don't they?
Day of.
They're sure of it.
And the plan was really that the CIA would send in these small teams, 8 people or so very small, to link up with Army Special Forces, or sort of Green Berets, as they're colloquially known, to link up with these warlords and basically use U.S. air power intelligence to supplement the warlords' infantry to take the fight to the Taliban and Al Qaeda.
And so these teams are being sent. So these small teams are going to have to get into Afghanistan with what, bundles of cash?
Yes.
And meet the warlords. That's the idea of it.
There is a lot of cash that goes in. So, the first team actually goes in the last week of September with $3 million in cash, sort of non-sequential bills, as one does. Now, the first teams go in, they link up with a group of the Northern Alliance just kind of north of Kabul in a place called the Panjshir Valley. Now, this group that goes in first effectively doesn't do much for the first couple weeks other than try to get this thing going. There's a lot of diarrhea. There's a lot of coffee drinking.
Nice.
And a lot of hand-wringing from Washington, because the fall of Kabul is a complicated affair. Nothing quite gets going militarily for a few weeks, but there is an Uzbek warlord up in northern Afghanistan who has just recently returned from exile in Turkey, and he is a man by the name of Abdul Rashid Dostum.
Okay, let's talk about him, because he is a really interesting character. I spoke to someone who was in Afghanistan at this time, a Brit, and who was saying, he thought he was a bit like Attila the Hun, was his parallel. And his description of him was evil but likable.
Evil but likable.
Yeah.
That is a very fair description, I would say. There's a story that Dostum had a man actually chained to the tracks of a Russian-made tank in a courtyard of one of his forts, and actually drove the tank around until it, smashed the guy to pieces. There were stories about him actually crushing people's skulls in his hands, and that he was known to eat 12 chickens at a time and drink 2 quarts of vodka in one sitting. So Dostum, again, has no direct relationship with CIA. Dostum has a friend in the States who, in the 80s, got sort of connected to Afghanistan because one of his colleagues at the National Automobile Dealers Insurance Trust was an Afghan politician who had left after the war. So Dostum gets in touch with this guy, who puts Dostum in touch with the Pentagon. Dostum gets put in touch with the CIA, and specifically with a CIA officer named David Tyson. He's a Central Asian-focused case officer who's been working in Tashkent, Uzbekistan, out of the station there.
And he's the one person who speaks Uzbek in the CIA.
He's the one
he becomes
person.
A very important person in the CIA at this
Yes.
point, having probably not been the most important person previously.
That's
and
right.
he's going in then with the team to see Dostum.
They go in on the 17th of October, Team Alpha. They decide to fly in on 2 Black Hawk helicopters from Uzbekistan. There's no seats, so everyone's just sitting on Pelican cases. They have, of course, a large green sack stuffed with $3 million in non-sequential $100 bills. Everyone has an East German version of the Kalashnikov rifle, a 9mm Glock pistol. They've got no body armor or helmets, of course. They've got these little silk blood chits that basically say, I'm a friend in all of the languages of Afghanistan. And they're going in to link up with Dostum's forces.
And the idea is they're going to coordinate the Afghans to fight and to take on the Taliban and give them the kind of support they need to be able to try and eject the Taliban from power.
They come up with a plan whereby they'll get as close as possible to these Taliban encampments, and they're going to bring down U.S. air power. And Dostum has this great line after they come up with the plan. He says, "Now we will go and kill the Taliban. We leave in 15 minutes.
We're going to get on with it.
We're going to get on with it." U.S. air power is brought in on Taliban positions, bunkers, trenches, things like that. And then the Uzbeks will ride in mounted on cavalry. There'll be cavalry charges, sometimes of 400, 500, 600 people charging Taliban lines after the U.S. has bombed them. It's worth a note on the Uzbek fighters and the horses, because the guys on the who are on the ground, the Team Alpha guys, will note just how much willpower these horsemen have, how much suffering they've endured, and it makes them relentless and quite cruel.
So this is the strategy. You're going to use horseback, cavalry charges, and air power. So a kind of mix of old and new to take on the Taliban. And the target for this group is a crucial city in the north of Afghanistan, isn't it? Mazar-i-Sharif.
It is Dostum's former capital when he had run this region during the Civil War in the 90s. It has the longest runway, military sort of runway in Afghanistan. And it's a critical piece of the fight against the Taliban. The Taliban had only held Mazar-i-Sharif for 3 years. They conquered it in 1998. When they did, the Taliban lost 12,000 men taking the city. The Northern Alliance, as they cruise in with the Team Alpha on the Magic Bus behind them, there's fewer than 100. So, and the U.S. doesn't even bomb the city. So you do have there's this sense, I think, that, well, everything's working, going according to plan. They go in, it's a scene of really jubilation in the city, because this is kind of Dostum's patch of territory. The Green Berets are in horses, the CI Team Alpha is going in on the Magic Bus. Dostum arrives in kind of a white Land Cruiser. He's filmed, people are coming out, the markets are open. There's a shrine in Mazar-i-Sharif, which the Taliban had closed, shuttered over the last 3 years, that reopens. There, women are not in burqas. So there's this sense that something is lifted, right? In this sort of air of kind of jubilation and celebration in the town. Dostum goes in and sort of famously prays at this. He's not a religious man by any stretch, but he knows
he's got to do it.
He knows he's a good showman,
Yeah.
I think we can say, for a horse lord. He prays at this shrine. He's got tears streaking down his face, and kind of takes a victory lap around northern Afghanistan, because the Taliban have been defeated. I mean, they've landed on the 17th of October. In 3 weeks, they've taken the largest city in northern Afghanistan, this critical piece, and they've won every battle along the way. What we'll see is that it is not at all what it seems. Taliban and Al-Qaeda are regrouping for really another attempt at the city, and it's going to be a battle of medieval proportions in some respects, ancient in others, because there will be a Trojan horse involved. More horse lords, of course, a prison revolt in Mazar-i-Sharif, and, Gordon, you'll like this, some Brits are going to get involved as well. On that note, thank you for listening to The Rest is Classified.